So I'm thinking all the time when I'm running a program, I have a body to work with. I pretty much know with my assessment where the body is, okay, because I assess them. And we're going to be assessing Robin in part of her assessment today, so you can see that. But in basic program design elements, when I'm working, let's say I'm working with a baseball player. The baseball player will end his season, if he doesn't make it to the playoffs, he'll be pretty much done September, October. So the first thing that I'm going to do, now I've got about somewhere, I'll add how many weeks before the season starts and he has to go to camp. I've got X amount of weeks to build his off-season program. First thing I'm going to do is corrective exercise and recovery. The second thing I'm going to do is strength training. The third thing I'm going to phase, I should say, is power training. Just before going back to his sport, then we'll put it together with speed training. Now, that's the basic program design. Do we as trainers mix these up and put things together? I might have 8 where I've got some corrective, some strength. Maybe I want to do a power in the weakest area there, and then I move on. So I'm the artistry of changing how I can get him best off season. But what happens when I'm dealing with a golfer, tennis player, Olympic race walker, since we're dealing with that, is where's their 6 months off? These tennis players keep going. Only the smart ones picked what not to be in. And golfers, how many times you watch a golf thing and there's a lot of those golfers not there. They're off giving their body so they can come back for peak performance. You can't keep beating up your body and expect that you're going to be the best you can be. So how do we take that, which is a typical off-season program, and manipulate that with somebody's races throughout, or tennis tournaments, or all this? The first thing is you knock them over the head, or try to, just being joking, and say, you got to take something off here so we can figure what's the most important. So in Robin's case, the biggest race in her future is the next Olympics, period. That's where she has to be in peak. That's the only one she's going to be, that the world is going to remember her by. All these others, who remembers those? You know what I mean? But that's the big one. That's the one that we're all looking for in her category. So how do we put this in throughout the season is called periodization. How we periodize putting in what her body needs. We have to take in the linear programming, how that we're going to manipulate that training. Okay, so back to here. Why is strength training before power training and speed training? It's because strength training is where power comes from the combination of speed and strength. You have to go into the well of strength to add speed to it to produce power. Okay, so we will go strength training. So what is strength training? Strength training might be a deadlift. So we're doing a deadlift, okay? And we will do that with, I'm just going to pick some weight. We want to build the strength. We want to build the body up to handle more. We might say we're doing 250 pounds deadlifts. Well, I'm going to quickly start switching that. Okay, once I get enough strength, if I can find, they were only able to do 180 pounds and I want to get them up to 250, I'll get them up to 250, or maybe I only have enough time to get them to 230, doesn't matter. I get them there. And then in power training, I'm going to drop the weight, and it's the speed that I want them. So now I might bring them down to 100, pop those hips, pop them forward, get that propulsion power. Okay, so that's power. Power is also jumping. Power is also lunging. Power is also lateral movements where you're getting that moving as fast as you can, moving the load as fast as you can. That's power. Speed training is the ability to go faster, but in the body, the limbs to go faster. And the propulsion from this, the limbs can only go as fast as this. Okay, this is the major propulsion of gait, called the spinal engine and the hips and the pelvis. So these are just, so when these are going faster than this, you're not going to be, you're working against yourself, vice versa. Everything leads from the core out. Okay, and this, as this As this lat pulls this arm back, this is propelling forward. The reason why the 1-2 punch in boxing is most important and most powerful is because it's out there, and as it pulls back, as it's not this here, and this is pulling the ribcage around to make that speed. This is slow. That's fast. Same thing in movement. We've got to get that spinal engine whoosh, whoosh, flying around there to get you around the corner. Running, sprinting, marathons, race walking, anything in that area. Speed training is the most demanding on the body because what does it take for speed training? It takes the balance of tension and relaxation. Too much tension, you can't go fast. You're slowing yourself down. So you've got to have that right balance. And also, it's about ground force reaction. So the harder you hit the ground or drive into the ground, the faster you're going to be. So that went about this high. So it's going to move the body. But if we can get more force into the ground, oh, there we go. It's good, and especially when it's going in a horizontal, which I can't do on this rug. But when you're pushing something in a horizontal, it's the drive into the ground. Okay, whoever hits the ground hardest is the fastest sprinter in the 100-yard dash or the 100-meter. Okay, at the Olympics, whoever hits the ground hardest will be the fastest with perfect technique. Okay. Those that don't push down, don't have the mechanics to push into the ground will not be as fast. And there are timing plates. That's why we use timing plates to get how hard they're hitting the ground. They run across and how hard they're hitting the ground as whoever puts the more pressure into the ground is going to be the fastest. Okay, so it's no different with race walk. Even though running gives more push down because it's this in sprinting, okay, race walking is still the same, but it comes more from the thoracolumbar. So what I want you to do is I want you to stand up, and we're going to work on this. I just want you to stand up, and from Robin's films, Robin's upper body deficit is height, rounded, and elbows flaring out. Okay? So what I want you to do is this exercise that we did earlier today. Is you're going to stand there, and I want you to put the left hand, first do this and just pull, get those up there, get these around, so now I'm flaring out, okay? All right, there you go. Now, keep the right one going and feel what's happening to your left thigh as you do that. Do you feel the left thigh roll out? She doesn't, of course. That's how you do. All right, so because she's already out there. She can't get in. So we're going from in, she's stuck outside here. And we're going to explain why she's stuck out there. And so she's stuck out there because she's stuck in the posterior oblique system. So she's here, which rolls that out there. So this rolls out. And so as she's here, watch what happens to my thigh. It's here, never shuts off. It's supposed to, when she gets here, shut off, so this can swing around and get here. But it doesn't, okay? It stays on, and so now, when she gets here, this is stuck on, she's still here, this arm swings out, and so she's getting all her load is going to the outside of her leg. Because she can't get to her adductors, and I'm going to add more. VMO, that's the vastus medialis oblique, and the medialis muscles. And when you see her legs, you'll see that she doesn't have anything here. It's all over here, okay? And so that's because she's stuck in this and she can't get around into internal rotation to use the obliques here and the drive to push through. So she's missing this propulsion. Okay, and that's what we've got to get that, where she's here and here, when she's hitting the ground, she's coming around and she's using this miraculous drive of backward movement to get there. And she's using this this fascia and everything, and she does it better than anybody. And unfortunately, way too much. Okay, so she's tired at the end. That posterior chain is tired at the end of the race. So what's happened in the last year? Because the more she uses it, one chain, the more the chain gets abused. And then all of a sudden, we have hamstring issues. She's had a hamstring issue that hurt her finishing one race. She still did well, but she really dropped off. She did not finish because of pain. All from the posterior chain. And there could be anything from the calves to the hamstrings to the glutes. I'm most worried about the lumbar spine, okay, at this point. And shoulder injury, because the rotator cuff muscles in this, the bone is not in the socket. So as she's going here, the bone has to be in the socket to get good rotation. Hers is up and over, hitting the front of the socket, wearing down the socket here, and the thing. So what's going to happen? There's arthritis. So we need to get that back in here. And she's one of the older race walkers out there. So her body, like our bodies, is pretty beat up from doing things that way. So we need to get her from the posterior to the anterior. Now the other one is her lateral system. The lateral system is responsible for stabilization of the body. Her coach, Carl, told me her coach now wants her to walk, to climb, do mountain climbing type of stuff. That's the lateral system. Okay, so she's going to use the lateral system, and that's a great thing for her to be doing. However, we're in Florida, where's there a mountain to climb? Okay, so I thought about this, and then I recalled that we have that hill at Seminole Park on the grass, and that better for her. So what happens is when you go up the hill, you're using anterior chain, which she needs. You're using lateral chain, which I'll go into later muscularly. I'm not going to do that today. But that mountain climbing really helps that. But when she goes down the hill, she's now back in the posterior chain. I really don't want her to do the posterior chain if I'm ready to program. So I would rather have her run up the hill and go down the hill in the anterior chain. Up, down, which we talked about earlier. So that it's on an incline. So she's forcing herself to get these obliques working and get those abs working as she's going up and down. And we can start transferring into getting more anterior chain work. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. But what's great is climbing a mountain, you're stepping up here and so what is it? So basically you've got QLs, glute minimus, glute medius, that are responsible for keeping you inside. So what happens is when you go in, this hip goes out and it creates a straight line. Then this hip goes out, but when one hip goes out more than the other, that's too much, and it's tight on one side, then this is happening and we're going to have a real problem. So that's the lateral system, which I'll go in deeper individually. All these things are what I'm always thinking about when I'm writing somebody's program and I'm reassessing them. And am I doing all these? The artistry is knowing when to do, when to change, when to stop doing one thing to get another thing of all the muscles. All I talked about was slings, springs, and what gets you. I didn't talk about all the, I talked about some muscles, but not all the muscles. Okay, so we've got to correct muscle balance so the hip's in the right place. We want the hip seated. We want the humerus, the arm bones seated. If they're in the socket, they're going to fly. If they're outside the socket and they're in there wrong, that is resistance and wear and tear.